Bro, I'm about to tell you something that explains why some families get richer every decade while everyone else just runs faster on the same treadmill. And once you hear it, you're gonna understand why banks, employers, and even schools would rather keep you tired and distracted than let this click. Because the second it does, your entire relationship with money flips. This isn't illegal, it's not hidden, it's not a loophole. It's a system baked directly into how money, taxes, and ownership actually work, and almost nobody explains it to regular people on purpose. Here's the first thing you need to understand. You and the wealthy are not playing the same money game. You were trained to think in income, salary, wages, overtime, raises. That's the lane most people live in their entire lives, and that lane is taxed aggressively at every step. The people at the top don't obsess over income because income is the most punished form of money in the system. They obsess over ownership, assets, things that grow quietly without triggering taxes. That difference alone explains why two people can make the same amount on paper and end up in completely different universes financially. Workers get taxed when they earn, owners only get taxed when they sell. And here's the key, the wealthy don't sell. This is where the numbers start sounding unreal. Trillions of dollars sit inside assets owned by the wealthiest families that have never been taxed. Not because anyone is cheating, but because nothing taxable has technically happened. In this system, growth doesn't count until you turn it into income. An asset can rise for decades, and as long as it isn't sold, the tax bill stays at zero. That's not a bug, that's the design. The wealthy understand this deeply. They buy things they intend to hold. They let time do the heavy lifting. And while everyone else is focused on what they made this year, owners are focused on what they own and how fast it's compounding. Now, here's where it starts messing with people's heads. The wealthy don't just let assets grow, they use them without selling. This is where borrowing enters the picture. Most people think debt is bad because they only experience it when they're struggling. The wealthy use debt when they're winning. They borrow against assets that are rising in value. And loan money is not income. That means it isn't taxed. Think about how wild that is. Your assets grow, you don't sell, you borrow against that growth, you access cash, you pay no tax, and the assets keep growing anyway. That's not accidental, that's structural. Debt becomes a bridge instead of a burden when you understand how to use it. Most people hear interest and panic. The wealthy hear interest and start calculating. They don't ask how much does this cost, they ask does this allow my assets to stay invested? If your assets grow faster than the interest you pay, borrowing works in your favor. And in many cases, that interest can reduce taxes elsewhere. So now debt isn't just access, it's leverage and protection at the same time. This is why selling is the last thing wealthy people want to do. Selling triggers taxes. Selling shrinks compounding. Selling breaks momentum. Borrowing lets them live, invest, and expand without touching the engine that's building their wealth. Here's the part most people miss. This strategy isn't about speed, it's about patience. The biggest mistake average people make is selling too early. Fear, panic, needing cash. Nobody explains that selling cuts compounding in half and invites taxes into the picture, so people keep restarting the process over and over. The wealthy do the opposite. They hold, they accumulate, they let decades pass, and over time the numbers stop feeling real. What started small becomes massive simply because it wasn't interrupted. Ownership rewards patience in a way labor never will. That's why trading all day rarely builds fortunes. Owning quietly does. This isn't limited to one type of asset either. Stocks work this way. Real estate works this way even better. Businesses work this way. Anything that appreciates and can be borrowed against fits the framework. The wealthy don't see assets as things to flip, they see them as foundations. Over time, lenders become comfortable offering access to that value. Lines of credit, refinancing, liquidity without liquidation. The assets keep working, the owner keeps control, and the tax system stays on the sidelines because nothing taxable occurred. That's why focusing only on income keeps people stuck. Income is loud. Ownership is quiet, and quiet is where wealth compounds best. Now comes the final piece, the one that explains generational wealth. When an owner passes away, the tax system resets the value of their assets. Decades of gains simply vanish for tax purposes. Heirs receive assets at current value, not the original price. That means no capital gains tax on all that growth. The loans get settled, the assets move forward clean, and the cycle continues. Buy, hold, borrow, pass it on. That's how fortunes survive generations. And here's the part people get wrong. You don't need to be ultra rich to start thinking this way. The moment you stop treating assets like short-term trades and start treating them like long-term engines, the math changes in your favor. Here's the truth, bro. The system was never designed to reward effort the way it rewards ownership. But once you see that, you stop fighting the wrong battle. You don't need to make $1 million a year to use these principles. You just need to stop interrupting your own growth. If this opened your eyes even a little, hit the like button, subscribe, and keep going. The next video builds on this, and once you start seeing money clearly, there's no going back.